Good morning. Anytime there's a unique day, such as a Shabbos or a Rosh Chodesh or a Yom Tov, we add in a mentioning of that day, both in Tefillah as well as in Birkas Hamazon, as well as when we bench after eating a bread meal. On Shabbos, that insertion in benching is, of course, the paragraph of Retzeh that we add immediately prior to the bracha Uvenei Yerushalayim. What happens, though, if one forgets to include Retzeh in benching? So simply speaking, if one remembers prior to reciting the Shem Hashem of the bracha of Bonei Berachma of Yerushalayim, before you get to the concluding bracha, then you could go back and again continue from Retzeh and not a problem. If you remember immediately following the bracha of Bonei Berachma of Yerushalayim, prior to beginning the final bracha of saying Shem Hashem in the final bracha, then there as well, there's a text that the Shulchan Aruch brings, a special unique bracha that one at that point can add. However, what happens if one forgets entirely? After they've concluded benching, they realize they forgot to say Retzeh. The general rule, which is true for Retzeh as well as any other insertion, Ya'aleh V'yavo or the like, is that if one forgets, it depends. Was there a formal obligation to have a bread meal? If there was, then one is obligated to add that insertion and go back and repeat. And if not, then one does not need to repeat. So in a case of Rosh Chodesh or even Shalosh Chodesh, even in a case, in both of those cases, since technically speaking, one need not eat a bread meal, then one would not go back. Shulchan Aruch writes, one would not go back and repeat benching in such an instance. However, on a Friday night or a Shabbos lunch, where there is a clear formal obligation to have a bread meal, therefore, I'm obligated to wash, I'm obligated to bench, I'm obligated to include the insertion of Retzeh. And thus, if I forgot to include Retzeh in benching, I would indeed have to go back. One interesting note is that the Shmir Shabbos Kehilchasa and others rule that if one Shabbos morning had Kiddush and had a kazayas of mizonos for Kiddush before washing for their lunch, and then they forgot at lunch to add Retzeh, in that case, they actually rule that one would not need to go back and repeat benching because they technically fulfilled their daytime obligation of their meal by Kiddush. However, not everyone agrees, and many assume one still would have to go back and repeat Retzeh. What happens if one is in doubt? The Mishnah Berurah rules that we assume in such a manner that you did not say Retzeh, you did not insert Retzeh if we are uncertain, similar to the fact that the first 30 days, when adding Mashiv Ruach or V'tein Talum Matar, in those cases, we assume you said what you are used to saying. And since typically when we bench, we don't add in Retzeh, if we don't add in Retzeh on Shabbos, then we would assume that one did not add it in and would indeed have to repeat. So again, the basic idea is if one has a formal obligation, they would have to go back and repeat. If one does not have a formal obligation, they would not have to go back and repeat. One final note also is in regards to saying Alamichya. If one forgets the Shabbos insertion and reciting Alamichya at Kiddush or otherwise, one would not have to go back in that case either. Have a great day.